Afternoon and good evening to everybody, because somewhere around the world it's that time. Today's show has got to be about gun control. It's got to be about control of people, controlling the poor people of this country and disenfranchising them. Today's show has to be educational. We have drifted so far off of the platform's curriculum because of just things that the Democrats have been doing that I haven't been able to get some lesson plans out to the audience, and I have been putting some stuff on Instagram for you people to view and talk about and chat about, but the platform, has been missing it a great deal. So today we're going to get into that, but before we get into that, we got to get into this. Please do remember that the New Right Party channel and the New Red Party show is sponsored by patriots like you. And as long as you're sending these donations, it allows me to create the content that will continue to make these motherfuckers sick. As you were.
He's on fire!
First is the family and my family entertainment and his team no sleep. Flossy high and yeah we made it. The haters keep on hating on the songs that we be making, and I heard they want my soul. Illuminati wanna take it. First is the family and my family entertainment and his team no sleep. Flossy high and yeah we made it. The haters keep on hating on the songs that we be making, and I heard they want my soul. Illuminati wanna take it.
CEO, bullshit, paying for the pussy, I endorse it, riding through the city, that's my off.
I want to shout out everybody in the building. Oh, there we go. What the fuck's going on with my buttons? Give me one moment, people. There we go. Okay, here we go. Get that set up just now. Gun control, gun control, gun control, gun control. You know, today, people, I got to reach out to poor America, to Black America, to the disenfranchised America, the inner cities, the places where you are a partial citizen, if that, honestly, if that. Blacks and other poor migrants that came into this country in its early inception, as you know, on my show prior to, I broke down the history of the Democratic Party, how they created the Black Codes. The Black Codes were a code that free slaves couldn't own firearms, knives, or anything that would allow them to defend themselves and or cause white people harm. Even though they were free, these codes existed to keep African Americans at the time, Black Americans, from having a true right to defend themselves and or their property. The NRA was formed by God-fearing white Republicans. It was formed to stop the oppression of the blacks that were freed. It was formed to teach blacks how to arm and defend themselves, and it was formed to guarantee that blacks and other poor Americans will not be disenfranchised from their rights, constitutional rights. We fast forward to today's day and age, where young rappers such as Lil Wayne and Ja Rule have received prison time. Other notable rappers such as Prodigy have received prison time. Ja Rule received prison time. Lil Wayne received prison time. All of these individuals received prison time. The only thing is they had no prior felonies. They had guns, and by all means, these individuals worth millions of dollars should have the ability to have a firearm on them to protect their lives. See, the idea is to put a bunch of poor people in these so-called ghettos in these cities and then remove their rights to defend themselves. You can't even own a firearm in New York City in your home because they will arrest you. They will enter into your home with a search warrant to take away something that in other states you are legally able to do. Why is it that you find the predominant amount of minorities and other migrants inside of these cities? They place them in these cities so they cannot experience true American freedom. We're going to get into some stuff today. Because, you know, I'm not here to play. I'm not here to play. I'm not here to fuck around. I'm not here to mix words or waste them. I'm here to educate some mofos. And that's what the fuck I'm going to do this morning. I woke up today feeling good. Spirit feeling good. I got my fucking energy drink going. Organic, of course. Everything's organic. I got my fucking moderators in the building. Shout out to Ash, Drop, and Jolly. Shout out to Rizal. Shout out to Dina Marie. You know, I got Uber guy in the building. Shout out to everybody in the fucking building right now. You know, shout out to Deplorable Arab who was first in the building. Mamacita, I see you. You are a very, very, very strong support system, and I'm appreciative to everybody that's in this motherfucking building. Today we're going to educate some motherfuckers. We got to. Because we have a bunch of black people outside that don't realize that they're asking for further disenfranchisement. They're asking for the right to further be oppressed and not have the right to defend themselves. So I got to break this shit down so it makes sense.
Great opportunity for us to come together and talk about the rich history that African Americans have here in this great nation. Unfortunately, one of the things that's rarely discussed during this time of the year is the role that the Second Amendment has played in helping African Americans, in fact all Americans, secure our rights and liberties. There's no doubt that from the Civil War through the Civil Rights Movement, all the way through till today, the Second Amendment has played an integral role in helping African Americans secure their rights. Dating all the way back to slavery, laws...
I was just talking to a Uber guy, man. I was talking to Shannon the other day, man. We're going to have to work something out where like when we doing vacations, you run my show, and when you doing vacations, I'm going to run your show. But we gotta help each other, because me and you is like, I don't have a lot of people I trust in this game, man. And you are definitely my right hand, brother. So we're going to have to talk and discuss something, especially when Turning Point comes. There's a lot of things that's happening, and I don't want the show to miss so many days. So even if it's like 5 days, I'm going to be on vacation. If I can get you to stand in for a day, Negro, for a day. You can look out for me. I'll look out for you. I'll stand in on your show. I don't mind giving you the stream key. I trust you absolutely. Ash dropping, Jolly, you too. All right, because you're my second, and I already told you that some days that people are going to be needing to step in. We're building this branch. We're building this family. Before we get back into the curriculum, I just need you guys to understand where we're going with this. There will be days that I will not be able to do the show, and you will have to step up. We will figure out what we got to get to you so we can get everything situated that way everyone's capable of actually getting the show done. No, you will not sit in the no, you will not sit in the Oval Office. I'm just joking. You do what the fuck you want to do. Let's get to the curriculum.
Were put in place in order to keep slaves and freed black men from getting firearms. And that practice African Americans, in fact all Americans, secure our rights and liberties. There's no doubt that from the Civil War through the Civil Rights Movement, all the way through till today, The Second Amendment has played an integral role in helping African Americans secure their rights. Dating all the way back to slavery, laws were put in place in order to keep slaves and freed black men from getting firearms. And that practice continued after the Civil War as many states passed what's known as black codes, specifically designed to keep African American men from exercising their right to keep and bear arms. It was the passage of these laws and the proliferation of violent actions against African Americans that spurred the creation of one of the most unlikely civil rights groups of its time, the NRA.
How was the NRA founded? Because it's a white racist organization.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you got to go back a little bit, because what happened prior to the Civil War was in the southern states, a black cannot have an arm in self-defense of anything, anywhere. Because
the southern states were democratic states, people. The leaders that we've seen were democratic leaders that were on those statues that the Democrats wanted to take down. And Trump said, no, leave it up so we can show their disgusting ass fucking past.
He might use it like they did Nat Turner to kill a white guy, and then we can't have that. So what you have is blacks have no self-defense rights. Then you have the 13th Amendment that says all blacks are free in the South everywhere, not just the Emancipation Proclamation in the South.
Can they own a gun?
They could, but what happened was, being free, instantly in the South they started passing what we call the black codes. They had about 11 laws.
The black codes were invented and passed by Democrats. The black codes also disenfranchised white registered Republicans, people. The shit hasn't changed with these motherfuckers, man. They have become very crafty at using us, using our culture against us to keep us dumb as fuck. You don't know what it feels like to have a firearm. Shannon, may I please get your unloaded, get an unloaded firearm, please?
Yes.
And show, because legally I'm unable to show a loaded firearm. Because if it's loaded, then it's an actual firearm. But if it's unloaded, then it's not. It's not. It's just an inanimate object by law. By law, it's not a firearm now. Black men, they don't know what it feels like to hold this in their hand and know what it feels like to have the ability to defend themselves and their families. Whenever you hear about a black person being taken advantage of or hurt or harmed, it's in a democratic city. It's in a democratic city. There was a man outside in New York City who was choked to death because they said that he was selling fucking loose cigarettes, people. Do you honestly believe those officers would have ran up on a man that was carrying legally? Do you see officers running down on just black men that's carrying legally in legal states? I mean, you do see it. You do see some contradictions. You do. And I'm not saying that you don't see it. But how many cases do you hear of these individuals being shot and killed? Hardly ever. If I did the statistics on white men killed by cops opposed to black men, the numbers are staggering. They're staggering. Why is it that everyone else in the country gets to carry firearms, but if you're in a city, you can't? See, they tell you there's a city ordinance. But a state can't. A state law doesn't supersede the constitutional law. No city codes, no penal codes, none of these things trumps the Constitution. I am 36 years of age. I've never in my life owned a driver's license. You do not need a driver's license in order to travel in this country. I have made a successful 84 trips from New York City to California. 44 going, 44 going, 40 coming back. It's a lot of trips. I have been stopped, pulled over, given tickets, and I haven't paid them because I'm not moving in commerce. The most important thing you can do, poor Americans, is learn the law. Teach your children the law while you're teaching them their ABCs. The one thing I learned when fighting the federal government and becoming an esquire, whether you realize it or not, I, myself, have argued a case in federal court. And I, myself, won and brought myself home. If you read my story, it's clear as day and it's in there. Acting as my own attorney, I got myself free. I don't claim to give you legal advice here. I say, in my opinion, and I bring up case law. My case law is case law. I'm telling you, federal law supersedes, constitutional law supersedes any state penal codes. You have a guaranteed constitutional right to travel in a horse, carriage, and or automobile. A driver is someone that is being compensated or that is moving in commerce. You're being compensated to travel from one point to the next with a person and or goods to be compensated once you're finished. I do not taxi people around at all. I travel on my own accord, on my own leisure. When you learn the law, you learn your history, it changes you in a profound way. People see this guy from the hood. They see the Rolexes, the chains. I got a lot of fucking shit that I can show you that's shiny, if that's going to get your attention. But I got some more important shit I got to feed you so you can get it, so you can understand what it is that's happening in front of you. Because this same shit was done before, people. They put you in these fucking cities and have you congested with one another so you're always fucking mad and upset. And then they put people around you that's oppressing you, fucking you up, doing whatever the fuck they want to do to you, and then taking away your right to fucking defend yourself. If you're a black woman in New York City right now, someone can kick in your fucking door, hold you hostage, rape you, do God knows fucking what to you, and you do not have the ability to run to your bed, under your pillow, to the cabinet, to the sink, to any hiding place where you have guns to shoot intruders that's coming in your house. This is what I'm talking about. When someone can come and put a fucking gun in your head and tell you to get against the fucking wall just because they feel like it. How do you think these people feel empowered to do it? Because this shit doesn't happen with other law enforcement. It only happens in these fucking cities that are black, that have blacks living in it. It's not happening anywhere else. I've never been pulled over in Iowa and thrown on the hood of my car and had the shit beat out of me because I'm fucking black. But I've been in my hallway in the projects smoking a blunt and had to close the fucking door and run from police because they want to lock me up for smoking a fucking blunt in my hallway. I just seen Ja Rule's my brother, man. I love you, bro. I really do love you, man. But I just seen him post something that says vote and vote blue. And I'm not against what it is that he chooses to say or do. But these same people that he is advocating for are the same people that came for his and Irv's company, Murder Inc. Same federal government that went to tear down black men that was successful. That was the white man that did it. That was the liberal white men that did it. He was in New York State. He was in New York City. They went and tore down his company. They went after their funds. Because that's what the liberals do. destroy any black men that are successful. We're going to get into this we're going to get into this lesson plan today, people.
One of the laws is blacks cannot own guns, they cannot own knives, they cannot own any weapon. They're free. They're citizens. Well, they can't own anything to defend themselves. Then in 1866, you have the Klan that gets started. And the Klan is after
started by Democrats,
driving out all the free blacks and all the Republican whites that freed them. And so at that time, you have in total about 5,000 lynchings. About 75% were of blacks, 25% were of whites.
Lynchings. What climate do we have now, people? Are black and white people outside together not being attacked? See, for black people, they were just waiting for me to come. And I don't want to over express my importance, but let me explain to you why I said that. They was waiting for somebody that looked like them, talked like them, felt what they really felt, that was going to just say the truth. That wasn't going to be afraid to die like Malcolm was, like Martin was. I too, I want to live a long life. I want to have a head full of gray hair, but I don't expect it. Because I come from where they come from. And I know how easy it is to take a life. I've seen it happen every day where I'm from. Every day there's candles somewhere being placed somewhere.
Right. So Klan is after anybody that's for black rights. So at that point, the southern states are not doing anything to inhibit the Klan. Often it is the government themselves that is part of the Klan that is going after the blacks. And so NRA rises up in 1871 with 3 Union officers who had fought to end slavery, fought for civil rights for blacks. 2 of them were Union generals, and they start the NRA. And part of the reason is they want blacks to be able to defend themselves individually, use their individual right of self-defense against the Klan because the government's doing nothing to stop it.
In fact, the civil rights movement is full of examples of black men.
Every individual you see fighting for civil rights were fighting against the liberals. There isn't a civil rights leader currently today that wouldn't tell you different. Even this old piece of shit. That's fuck that. You know what I'm talking about. That token nigga that they love to use and say that he was out there during the civil rights. If he was out there with the Democrats during the civil rights, somebody need to find his ass and whoop his old ass because the Democrats was against desegregation. As I pointed out on prior episodes, Al Gore's father was one of the main objectives.
Using the Second Amendment in order to defend all civil rights for all people. For example, in 1964, the desegregation of Jonesboro, Louisiana High School was threatened when an angry mob showed up, complete with support from law enforcement with fire hoses.
Democrats.
But then, 4 African-American men showed up with shotguns. And without firing a shot, the crowd eventually backed down, and law enforcement moved aside to allow the students to pass.
Hear that?
These 4...
Do you hear that? Did you hear that? I said, did you fucking hear it? That's what I asked you. I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to you. This is who I'm talking to. I'm talking to you, brothers and sisters. For those of you that's come to my show today, that's come here to think that you're going to find a place where you're free to troll and promote the liberal ignorance, you're gonna get woke up. I'm gonna shake the shit out you when I wake you the fuck up. Because this is what you need. Guns protect you from slavery. You need to make sure that these motherfuckers that are governing your states allow you to have the right to defend your fucking self. Stop running around here looking like dumbasses. You don't know why the fuck you outside. You don't know how to, you don't have one fucking real reason to say the president's racist. There's no reason why you're stopping yourself from demanding what everyone else on my side already knows you're supposed to have. Wake the fuck up.
Men were members of an organization known as the Deacons for Defense. They were everyday citizens who got together and organized in order to defend themselves and their community against the tyranny and violence of the Ku Klux Klan.
America is based upon the right of people to organize for self-defense. This is in the Constitution of the United States. The Second Amendment to the Constitution spells out the right of people under this particular governmental system to have arms to defend themselves.
Needless to say, some folks didn't take that too well. So thus was born the gun control movement. But make no mistake, this wasn't about controlling violence or gun violence as they would have you believe. It was about making sure that...
It was controlling the access to firearms to African Americans that will later unite with a nation that they once united with to find themselves free men. Black people, I'm going to free you. This month will be a month of historic change. This year will be a year of historic change. I pledge my life on it. Things are going to have to change. And then there will be no excuse of this president being racist after what he does happens. There will be no excuse for hatred. There will be a time for unity. There will be a time where you will be so upset and so well aware that this government has allowed these globalists to get in and circumvent us, that you will become the true warriors that you once was. You will stand up to free the country with me. This shit sounds delusional, but in order to be great, you have to believe in some things that most will believe unbelievable. I don't dream often, and when I dream, they're very special dreams. The idea for this show is for my viewers, for all colors all around the world, to get the information. But the idea of this show is to wake up the fire inside the inner city. And in the inner city, there isn't just blacks. There's Latinos, there's Asians, there's whites, there's Arabs. There are people from all over the world. All legally here, all legal citizens, and all dealing with the same shit I just said to you. Discrimination. Whereas in other places, it's perfectly legal for you to have these things. But if you're over here, nope, we just seem to knock the Constitution off and charge you as criminals. And then we are able to give you felonies. And then while you're in our city, since you have these felonies that we're now giving you because we are taking away rights that you have, we are now allowed to say you can't find housing because you have a felony. If you live in the projects, we can remove you from the projects. We can remove your parents from the projects if you caught the felony in the projects. Same shit with the weed. Now all of a sudden they want to let up on the weed in New York. Now it's not illegal. If you have weed on you, they can't take you to jail. They can give you a ticket if you have more than an ounce or a half an ounce or any of that bullshit on you. But they had to give you something to distract you from the fact that they're locking you up. Because legally you have the right to bear arms. But where they place and house you and make it almost impossible to leave, they take away these guaranteed rights given by the Constitution. No wonder you want to say fuck a flag. No wonder you don't want to stand for the anthem. Because the main component that gives you the pride to do so, which is the right to protect yourself, they have taken away from you. That's why. So you can't love a flag because you don't know what it feels like to have that flag give you the right to have that fucking gun on you, or that fucking strap, or that fucking grip, or that fucking hammer. I ain't passed a city ordinance saying that shit was cool. I didn't elect somebody that said take away my fucking right to defend myself. Did you? I can see if they say you can't open carry in New York City. Okay. But you still have the right to have firearms in your home to protect yourself. I'm certain there'd be less home invasions. And if there is any home invasions, it would only be because of someone whom you would know coming in your home. But it would be hard to get inside someone's home in New York City because the locks and the doors are industrial standards. It takes rams to get into these doors. Most doors in New York City have outer gates. But you do not have the right to defend yourself. In Detroit, you do not have the right to defend yourself. Chicago, you do not have the right to defend yourself. But somehow, military-grade weapons by the fucking boatload are finding themselves in the inner cities of Chicago where blacks predominantly live. There are countless black people locked up because they had firearms on them, never had felonies, never even intended to use the firearm to rob anyone, hurt anyone. They just had it because the area in which they live in was pretty fucking dangerous. My mother was robbed when I was 11 years old. If she had the right to have a firearm on her, she could have shot her assailant. She could have defended herself. At what point do we look at the obvious, call it the obvious, and then start calling it out? I get it, y'all afraid because they kill people, but you got me now. You got me now. Am I afraid to die? No. You got me now. It's time somebody tells you the truth. There's somebody out here brave enough to tell you the truth. They're killing us. They're knocking us off. They're controlling us. And they laughing about it. And then whenever they can, they post you on their television to further their own narratives. When they want to show you crazy and irate for their cause, they show you crazy and irate for their cause. Whenever they want to show you needy and weak and needing their support, they put you on the news and they put a woman up there looking disheveled and unkept. They find the most uneducated and unarticulate black person they can, and they portray them on the news. And they take that same footage and pass it along and regurgitate it. They get the same token niggas and put them in suits, because them niggas ain't buying it. They putting earpieces in their ears, and they got people giving them spins so they can go on television and make it seem like these individuals actually speak for the truth. They won't put individuals in the same room with me. None of them. At all. Be suicide. It'd be the last thing they do. You can't spend me. I'm not for the bullshit. When you have someone there not fucking playing, it's hard, man. Because black people know. The one thing we do is we feel, man. I'm not playing. The fuck? I'm not playing, man. I'm not playing with none of them. Don't come to me with dumb shit. T.I. Oh, how can you vote for Trump? He's a racist. Tell me how. And I'm gonna wait. He ain't gonna come with it. If he come up and he say the Central Park 6, he was wrong for the Central Park 6. He said he was wrong for the Central Park 6. Should I not forgive him? You got caught with guns and all type of dumb shit. Have you not been forgiven? Are you not working? Do you not have a television show? Have you not been forgiven? Do we not allow ourselves change? Do we not accept that people develop better as human beings? Why is it that you deserve a second chance and a second look, but he doesn't? Hypocrisy. No one can debate me. It doesn't matter who you bring. You don't have the answers, Sway. You don't have the fucking answers.
Those people didn't get guns.
There's been a lot of talk said recently because I was supposed to have said something about Negroes should buy rifles. White people have been buying rifles all their lives. No commotion.
The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense calls upon the American people in general and the black people in particular to take careful note of the racist California legislature, which is now considering legislation aimed at
Democratic state,
keeping the black people disarmed and powerless.
For black Americans, we know that gun control has ultimately been about people control. It sprouts from racist soil, be it after or during the infamous Dred Scott case, where black man's humanity was not recognized. And the beauty about some races is that sometimes
I'm going to play this whole video because I have it queued up already.
sometimes they're blatantly honest. And the racist Chief Justice Taney said, we cannot allow the law to recognize the humanity of this individual because he would be able to keep and bear arms.
And where did they get their inspiration? None other than the master himself, Adolf Hitler. That's right, they actually went to the codes that Nazi Germany used in order to keep guns out of the hands of undesirable people. In some cases, they went as far as to copy the language word for word. Many African American leaders recognize gun control for exactly what it is. They also recognize the important role that the Second Amendment has played in our history as African Americans, and they're working aggressively to make sure that that message is heard throughout the Black community.
They need to revisit their history, Black slave history, Black Jim Crow history, and they should visit the histories of other tyrant nations where we had people like Hitler and Stalin and Mao, and every single time there is someone who wants to take away all other rights of the people, the first right they take away is your right to bear arms.
We respect the Second Amendment. We know that it had value to keep a new government from slipping.
I don't agree with most things this man says, but this one thing here in particular, this is the point of being a leader. Kim Jong-un and President Trump are night and day, yet intelligent enough to know that it requires them two sitting down and having a discussion in order to stop war from happening. So why is it that these black leaders, so-called black democratic leaders, aren't sitting down with the president to make change happen? Wait till they unleash me.
Back.
Did you feel that?
Into tyranny. We have to protect what is ours from any thief or robber that will try to take it from us. And that's where the Second Amendment comes in for us.
I believe Dr. King would look at me with a bit of confusion as he happily struggled with envy that I, a young black male living in the heart of the South, whose house was never firebombed and has never received death threats, was granted a concealed handgun license. Yet he, who had encountered all of these things, was denied. Because let's not forget, the first forms of gun control were created to keep people like me from having guns.
When you touch the Second Amendment...
We're going to get into this video. You already know, man. You know how I do it. I'm ready. I'm queued up. I'm ready to go.
And a doctor from the Clayton State University Health Clinic, the Center for Urban Renewal and Education, is hosting this event, and it's just getting underway.
Procedures in our nation. This morning I'm going to speak for our chairman of the board for the Center for Urban Renewal and Education, G. Kenneth Blackwell, who cannot be here this morning, but prepared a statement that I'm going to read for you now, with a little help of technology. The Second Amendment is a fundamental...
Now I want you to look at this crowd. Notice that there is no blacks in attendance from the county in which they're holding this in. Know that there is only one black male in attendance in this audience. The reason why I want you to notice this is because those black individuals on the stage definitely told as many people as they possibly could But those individuals with the cameras, I'm pretty sure, gave them little or to no publicity leading up to this event. Democrats know that whenever there is meetings, whether it's city councilman or the mayor, blacks aren't in attendance. They use propaganda to gain their votes because they understand that their votes are not backed with any diligent research. There is no follow through. And if there is, it is a very few. And they are always of older age, and it's never the youth.
Right, enshrined in that sacred list of liberties in our Constitution that we call the Bill of Rights. It is right alongside the freedom of speech, the freedom of religious faith, the right that no person can ever make you a slave, the right that no state can deprive us of our rights or equal protection of the law, and the right to vote. It is a right of self-defense. In 1791, that right was adopted as
I'm gonna let this play. Give me 1 second while this plays.
the Second Amendment as a right of the people to band together to collectively defend themselves against public violence, meaning government tyranny. In 1868, that right was extended through the 14th Amendment to also defend against government oppression by state or local governments. And by 1791, through 1868 to 2013, it was and is also the right to defend yourself against private violence, the violence perpetrated by criminals. Yes, the framers of the Constitution wanted people to be able to hunt, and that is an essential part of our cultural fabric as a people. It is a rich part of our heritage, part of self-reliance, a way of passing down our values. It also provides precious time to spend time together for fathers and sons, and increasingly mothers and daughters. The right to bear arms is also for competition, for sporting, and is also for collectors. But as the Supreme Court recognized just 5 years ago, it was for the right of self-defense against some future government that would refuse to stand for re-election and would hold on to power by military might, and against lawlessness and heartless folks who would victimize others. That those who founded our nation made this right part of the supreme law of the land, forever trumping every president.
They're in Washington, D.C., just so you understand this, people.
Congress and court.
There were plenty of black people they could have had sitting there listening to this.
That would ever hold office in the United States. That right to protect one's life and liberty is a God-given right. It is a gift from God, not a grant from government. The government does not give us this right, just as the Declaration of Independence makes clear. Government does not give us any of our inalienable rights.
But in inner cities, they can take it away from you and punish you for your inalienable right. People, come on, man.
Instead, it is the role of government to recognize the rights God has given to each of us, to respect those rights and to secure.
This is the reason why they wanted to remove God from everything.
Secure those rights. That's what the Second Amendment does, and it is an essential right for every American citizen who is law-abiding and peaceable, regardless of skin color, geography, education.
Geography. People.
Or socioeconomic status. It is easy to understand how the Second Amendment relates to the culture of a Norman Rockwell painting of a rural father with his son walking through the woods with shotguns or rifles, hunting ducks or deer. But as important as that cultural heritage is, the core rights protected by the Second Amendment to protect yourself against public and private violence is just as real for Americans of all races and ethnic groups. We thank God that we no longer are in days where we have to fear government violence.
The Democrats are teaching our children is that it's them that gives them the right to do everything that they're doing, and not God that gives them the right to do everything that it is guaranteed for them to be able to do.
Where the Second Amendment right to resist a tyrannical government would be the right of a black man in the Deep South in 1870 having to protect himself against a local lynch mob posse, regarding which the local sheriff would look the other way, or worse yet, would sometimes be led by a local sheriff's deputy. But the right against private violence is even more important for so many black Americans today. A black man or woman in his or her 20s should be safe and secure in their apartment or going to work.
And he's saying this. And as I took Shannon through Brooklyn, she's noticed police cars parked in the streets with the sirens blaring, not the actual noise, but just the lights. She's seen a lot of detectives, because I had to point them out to her as they, drove by looking at us and other people, trying to scout people that they can just hop out on and try to pat down and check. Then I drove her through nice neighborhoods where she didn't see that at all. At all. They know that this is a God-given right. They know this is the Constitution that allows you to have this right. Yet they make sure they punish you for it. In New York, it's a mandatory 1 to 3 years.
A black father has a right to protect his family and his home. Or too often, and this is sad because it is harming to many black children, it is a single mother. She has every right to demand that she be able to protect herself and her family. The only clear equalizer between a striving young mother or grandmother and a full-grown man breaking into her home is a firearm that she knows how to responsibly store and use. I stand with you today in the protection of our Second Amendment rights. Sincerely, Ken Blackwell, Chairman, Board of Directors, Center for Urban Renewal and Education. Thank you. Next to the podium, I'd like to introduce someone near and dear to me and all members of our organization. Many of you know who she is and how she functions in media. Ms. Star Parker, founder and president of Center for Urban Renewal and Education, otherwise known as CURE. Star.
Thank you. Thank you, Lonnie Poindexter, who is our Director of Outreach and Education for the Center for Urban Renewal and Education. We appreciate the comment from our board chairman, Ken Blackwell, and for the media to note he is also a board member of the NRA, as well as a former mayor of the city of Cincinnati. This issue is very important to him as well. Greetings. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Star Parker. I'm the founder and president of CURE, the Center for Urban Renewal and Education, a conservative think tank that promotes market-based solutions to fight poverty. CURE has called this Black History Month press conference today to bring attention to the importance of defending the right of all Americans.
The next one they need Tony X there with his snap on, looking dapper as ever, speaking.
Guaranteed under the Second Amendment of our Constitution to bear arms. Thank you for being here. We're gathered here today to provide a forum for Black leaders from the world of politics and public policy in Washington, from the business community, from academia, and from the clergy to express our deep concern about efforts currently underway to limit our God-given and constitutional right of self-defense. Although CURE is based in Washington, D.C., I am a resident of California. Thus, Senator Dianne Feinstein, the author of one of the proposals to advance government control over gun ownership, is my representative. CURE is hosting this press conference with the hope that the information we share today will serve as a reminder to Ms. Feinstein and to all other United States senators that Black history is right.
A Democrat, and don't worry, sister, because I promise you, we're going to get this information out there. I's got some people's watching me's now.
With government demands to strip away our constitutional rights. We're standing here today because we believe that it is our duty as African American citizens to join together and challenge the gun control proposals currently being considered on Capitol Hill. 2 points. Number one, the call for universal background checks as qualifiers for constitutional rights invokes painful memories of Jim Crow laws and Black codes. A substantial body of research already shows that gun controls empowers criminals and weaken law-abiding citizens. Regarding Black realities, Blacks are the least armed, least protected and defended, and the most assaulted citizens in our country. According to a recent Pew Research Center survey, 42% of whites and only 16% of Blacks say that they have a pistol or rifle at home. Can anyone whom God has blessed with a brain actually think that universal background checks in which some past legal infraction might nullify a gun application will not result in even fewer law-abiding Black men from obtaining a weapon to protect their families? And what about Black women? According to research published in the British Journal of Psychiatry by Dr. Priscilla Coleman, professor of human development and family studies at Bowling Green State University, meta-analysis studies show an 81% higher risk of mental health problems with women who have had an abortion. Will abortion be one of the questions on the universal background check application? Number two, the call for banning specific guns, as Senator Feinstein has proposed, is also problematic as it puts...
Did you just hear that there's a study that shows that women that had abortion have mental instability issues? I mean, because what do you think killing a child does to a woman after she does it? Some way, shape, or form, it has to affect her.
It's too much power in the hands of politicians and the law enforcement establishment, which cannot always be trusted. In a Pew Research survey in 2009, 40% of whites compared to only 24% of Blacks said that they have a great deal of confidence in the local police to enforce the law. Law-abiding Black citizens live under siege in crime-ridden communities. Yet somehow they are supposed to buy the logic that giving more power to those in law enforcement already charged with maintaining order but don't, while stripping away the freedoms of those who do obey the law, will somehow make us better off? One question the gun control advocates are never challenged to answer for the most vulnerable in our country when they are moving to promote gun control is, how do you take a gun from the underground, the criminal, a racist cop, or a tyrannical government? Taking arms from the law-abiding many puts too much power in the hands of a perhaps ill-intended few. Black slave and Jim Crow history should serve as a clarion call that Americans of all backgrounds must fight this current round and all attempts of gun control. This Black History Month press conference is dedicated to the tradition of Black history legend Frederick Douglass, a runaway slave and great American orator who, as CURE Advisory Board member and Stanford Law professor Marcus Cole reminded us, Douglass stated on this issue that a man's rights rest in 3 boxes: the ballot box, the jury box, and the cartridge box. Thank you. Okay. I'm very pleased that we're joined for just representatives from all across this country who've come here at their own expense, many of them, to share their thoughts with us today. What we have before you is an opportunity for 4 to 5 of them to make a presentation here. We're pleased that media has come. We'll be available to answer your questions after these presentations. I will call on them. We'll have media ask questions. We will then do an informal dismiss, and then you can talk to the rest that have gathered. We then will take a small break. We will go for lunch, and we will come back and do a roundtable discussion on this extremely important issue, but that particular meeting is closed to the press. First, joining us is Dr. Ken Hutcherson. Dr. Hutcherson is a former American football linebacker in the NFL for the Dallas Cowboys, who is now a pastor of Antioch Baptist Church in the great state of Washington. Doctor.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Star. It is a privilege to be here today. And I'm going to tell you how important it is to me to be here. I've had cancer for 12 years. I've had bone cancer for 4.5 years. Now, if anyone has ever dealt with anyone with bone cancer, know anything about cancer, that is a very difficult time. And the pain oftentimes is unbearable. But I came from Seattle to be here because this issue is a lot more important than my health. It's a lot more important than my church. It's a lot more important than just myself. Now, I think it's important that I was shocked last night that I may have to change my mind about something. And that was when I heard that several African-American Pro Bowl NFL greats came out and said that we should really work on changing the Second Amendment. They are supporting the president's ways of going after the Second Amendment. So what I have to change my mind is that I think it's probably true there was brain damage in the NFL. I'm going to tell you how important the Constitution is and that we should be very careful about changing anything, especially the Second Amendment. All of you in here understand the importance of light. Light gives us ways that we can step correctly. The Constitution to the United States is the light that allows us to walk consistently and constantly. Now, you may not appreciate that example unless you understand the importance of light. Do you understand that the first thing God created in Genesis chapter 1, verse 3 was light? Light. And God spoke to it directly, and light obeyed at 186,000 miles per second. Now, God created it in Genesis 1:3, and light started at 183,000 miles per second to this very day, and I believe in a young earth. Now, you can say whatever you want. You can believe in the millions of years. I believe in a God who can create immediately. Amen. And I think the earth is a young earth, 7,000 to 8,000 years at the most. Now, Genesis 1:3 tells me light started traveling in Genesis 1:3 over 7,000 years ago. And it's still traveling at 186,000 miles to be obedient to God. And as pastors, as leaders, we need to be obedient to God. And God says, protect that which he has given the United States through men who believed in his word. Now, that's not impressive. What's impressive is what light reveals. If we turn this light off, one thing is for sure, all of us up here would disappear. Because you cannot see, you cannot walk directly, you cannot walk straight, you cannot walk in the circumstance of what is true. Light travels at 186,000 miles per second. If you multiply it times 60, light travels 11,160,000 miles in 1 minute. Multiply that times 60, light travels in 1 hour, 669,600,000 miles, and has been doing it ever since Genesis 1:3 for obedience. Why, if we are not wanting light to change, to put light on this situation, why would we ever think about changing the Constitution? Why would he ever think about touching the Second Amendment? Because it is proven true. It is proven the way for America, for African Americans especially, to protect themselves and to stand. Light traveling at 669,600,000 miles an hour. If you want to do it in a day, what you like to do it in a day, you multiply 669 million times 24. Light travels in 1 hour. Hold on. 16 billion, 70 million, 400,000 miles in 1 hour. Doing it since Genesis 1:3. Has not slowed down, has not found any excuse. I have never heard light say, well, I better not travel this fast because people are not going to understand it. Times change. And they're going to think I'm dealing with me and I'm bragging about myself. I never heard light say that. And as pastors and as Christians, as African Americans, we're not going to change our thoughts on what is right and what is needed to be done. Amen. Well, now see, now that's 16 billion, 70 million, 400,000, I said, in a day. It's easy to get how far light travels in a year. Would you like that? You multiply 16 billion, 70 million, 400,000 times 365. Now, you got to put your mind together to multiply that number. Okay. Light travels in 1 year. 5 trillion, 865 billion, 696 million miles. And I know it's a lot of you whites out there saying, hey, there ain't nowhere in the world a black man can figure that out. And we're going to check his numbers when we get out of here. Guaranteed that it does. It is so important for all of us to understand that light has been traveling 5 trillion, 865 billion, 696 million miles since Genesis 1:3, being obedient to God. We haven't been here any amount of time as long as light has. But we do know what light reveals. And this is what I have questions for all of you that is listening. How long? How many children has to die before we come to the conclusion that the issue about the Second Amendment is not about protecting kids, it's about changing the Constitution? How many children got to die before we admit that? How many children has to die before we come to common sense, which we have lost much in America today? It's not much common sense left. But how many of us are going to allow children to continue to die, to put signs in front of our schools to invite people to come in and kill them? What are you talking about, Pastor? Let me tell you what I'm talking about. How many of you will put in front of your house a sign that says gun-free zone? How many of you will put in front of your house, I have diamonds, I have gold, I have silver, I have precious metals, I have some great expensive artifacts, and I am not home. My dogs that are guard dogs are locked up, and I won't be home until 3:30 tomorrow afternoon. Would you put that sign in front of your house? But yet and still we want to put gun-free zones in front of our schools. How many black children has to die before you even care? Why isn't all the children that have been destroyed in all of our cities? Black on black crime. Don't get any front page news, but you get a Sandy Hook. And what happens? Everybody's in an uproar. We've had 10 times more African-American children killed with guns. Because you know what? How many children have to die, black and white, for us to come to the conclusion that most of the gun violence is in cities with the most gun control? When are we going to change our minds and put some common sense in there? When are we going to come to the conclusion that privacy may not be as important as a life? We need to know how many children is going to die before we change the HIPAA laws. How many children have to die before we get these lunatics, half of them, and people with mental issues off the streets? But because of their privacy, we can't do anything about it. And oftentimes families struggle to get them institutionalized. So how many children, and last of all, how many children has to die, my friends, before we come to the realization that a bad man with a gun can only be stopped by a good man with a gun? Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, my pastor. I am so pleased that you traveled so far to be here with us today. We have people from all over the country who have traveled. But next we have a local here in Washington, D.C., Mr. Harry C.
I came to bring it. I don't want to hear it from nobody. I'm Uncle Tom. You're welcome.
Alfred. He's the co-founder and president and CEO of the National Black Chamber of Commerce. But he represents people all across this country because his chamber represents 2 million black businesses in the United States. Harry Alford is going to talk on this particular issue today, gun control, but they handle a variety of issues. He is not a stranger in the halls of Congress and even consulting sometimes with the White House. Harry Alford.
Thank you, Star. Good morning. As Star said, I'm Harry Alford. I represent 2.1 million black-owned businesses in the United States. We have 140 chapters in the United States and 95 chapters elsewhere, Africa, Europe, South America, the Caribbean. Our business owners, many of them have retail stores. They have restaurants. They have cash operations. One of our previous board chair has a concrete plant in New Orleans. After Katrina wiped out everybody, streets, curbs, driveways, his business was booming. But he had to have Brinks trucks come to his company twice a day, and he had 2 of his employees armed to the teeth, because he was not going to let his business go down because of some bad guys. I want to thank the Lord for our Constitution. I also want to thank the NRA for its legacy. The National Rifle Association was founded by religious leaders who wanted to protect free slaves from the Ku Klux Klan. They would raise money, buy arms, show the free slaves how to use those arms, and protect their families. God bless you. Many of us probably wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the NRA. Rodney King showed an interesting model. When the riots started in LA and they started wiping out neighborhoods, mostly in South Central, when the rioters got to Koreatown, the violence stopped. Because every male Korean associated with those stores stood outside, they drew a line and held their weapons. Come across that line, you're dropping. And they meant it. Okay, let's go back to South Central, because people there don't have guns to protect themselves. It is a right just to live in Southern California, where I'm from. You've got diamond head, copperhead rattlers. You've got scorpions. You've got coyotes. You have mountain lions. One of my neighbors lost his German Shepherd to a mountain lion that came into his backyard. German Shepherd put up a fight. All he could do was watch, because he didn't have a gun. Just a fire in the air to scare the mountain lion. And the shepherd went off with the mountain lion. What if you're living in Florida and a python snake's in your yard between you and your infant child, or between you and your pet? What are you going to do? I think God gives you the right, and the Constitution does, to protect that child or that animal or your house. My people are from Louisiana. You're fishing. Water moccasins, alligators, they show up. They don't knock on the door. You got to deal with it. You don't walk outside. If you're a farmer, you have to deal with these varmints. So it's part of our lives. But what's going on here, I think, politically, in this town is a mind game. This is a diversion to keep you off the thought of this poor economy, which generates crime. This is about crime, and it's trying to divert your attention away from it, because they can't create jobs. I've got 2 quotes from people who know what they're talking about. Bruce Weinberg, PhD, Ohio State University. Public officials can put more cops on the beat.
This is Obama's administration, people. I'm talking about, this is who they're talking about.
Pass tougher sentencing laws and take other steps to reduce crime. But there are limits to how much these can do. We found that a bad labor market has a profound impact on the crime rates. The Review of Economics and Statistics. As wages go down and unemployment goes up, crime goes up, driving businesses and residents out of the community. This in turn causes more unemployment, which causes more crime, a spiral dive situation from which it is difficult to recover. My friends, what we need to do is create jobs. Create businesses. Small businesses hire 70% of all the new jobs. They create a thriving economy, less crime. But by all means, and let me deviate from Psalms, Pastor, though I walk through the valley of the death, I fear no evil, because I am the meanest, nastiest, fiercest person walking in that valley.
That's how I feel.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And in particular, a reminder of the Los Angeles riots. I was actually there during that time as well. And you're absolutely right that that is when we saw most of the violence stop, is when they reached Koreatown. I vividly saw at my Baskin Robbins that Korean on his roof with his shotgun. Reverend Kenneth Blanchard will be our next presenter. He's a United States Marine Corps veteran and pastor of a Baptist congregation here in Washington, D.C. He has been a gun rights activist since 1991. Blanchard was one of the first African-American firearms instructors in the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency. Reverend Kent, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, everybody. In honor of Black History, I want to introduce you to two people you might not know. One is my grandmother, and the other is my mother. Mary, both named Mary. Mary from Tidewater, Virginia, was my first instructor in firearms. My grandmother had a loaded shotgun next to her wood-burning stove all my life. It was unlocked. It was secured only by, we knew about Grandma. If we wanted to mess with that shotgun, we had to go through her. The shotgun did a couple of things. It secured the children, 30 of us, who we went there for refuge. My grandmother was the place where you'd go when your family wasn't doing too well, or summer vacation. It wasn't much to the house. It was the love that was in it. Grandma taught us a lot. She was the mother of her church. She prepared communion on Sunday. She was that mother, but she also had that shotgun. And I remember once when there was a strange pickup truck early in the morning that showed up at the house, and all the kids said, "Grandma, there's a couple of white guys coming out of the pickup truck." And Grandma grabs the shotgun. She moves to the screen door, and she says, "Good morning." They said, "Good morning, Miss Mary. We just passed into your land, and we wanted to make sure that we gave you some deer on our way back. And is that okay?" And I watched these men who I didn't know respect this little old lady from the rural parts of Tidewater, who also, I could see in their eyes, they saw when she moved to the right that she had something in her hand. And I thought, that made a difference in my life, that you can talk the talk, but you're going to have to walk the walk sometimes. And I learned as a Marine that sometimes you don't have to fire a shot. You just have to carry yourself the right way. And I learned that lesson when I got into the city. And my mother said, we were a country at one time, but now we got to kind of work in the system. And we don't hunt here in the city. And they talk about guns. And I had to remind my mother, we got the same mom. Remember the shotgun? And she said, "Oh, yeah." So later in life, when I became a firearms instructor and I became a protector, it was not by my own doing. I just kind of kept getting in that same mode over and over again. I've been everything from a safety guard, a safety patrol, a lifeguard. If it had a guard on the back of it, I've done it. Bodyguard. And then the ultimate is one time I actually stood outside the bedroom of President Reagan. I protected families. I've been the guy who's carried a gun most of his life. And then when I got into the clergy, they said, "You know what? You're really different from us." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm just a shepherd." A shepherd would defend his flock. A shepherd would go into harm's way. And then I became the shepherd of hunters and the shepherd of fishermen and the shepherd of those who usually don't come to church. I'm a big evangelist. I will go to where the people are. And they said, "I'm glad you're here. Help us understand how the world's making us seem like bad guys." I said, as the hunter, you have a special spot in the world. You're conserving things. You're making the whole ecosystem work. But if you look at the news, we're the bad guys. I said, only because they don't know. Or only because they're using the lack of responsibility and the lies. And also, the biggest thing is the false gods. We have a responsibility problem. Nobody wants to take responsibility for anything. And we want to make somebody else our God, which is the ultimate sin. When a politician steps forward and says, "I can save your children," you cannot save my child. When somebody believes that that person has the right to do anything, you're stepping out of bounds.
Didn't I just say that, people?
I'm honored to be here as yet another shepherd, to say, trust in the only true God. He is the provider of your safety. He who taught David, who trains his hands for war. For there's a time and a place for everything. And we have to make sure that we don't give too much power to those who really have none. Politicians are not the gods. Take them off the pedestal. Take them out of the position that we have put them in. They can't fix your family. You have to fix your family. You have to take care of your child. You have to take care of your wife, your husband. It's your responsibility. What God gives you, you are a steward of. And sometimes you're going to have to go in harm's way. And you can't do it with just harsh words and empty promises. Thank you.
Our next presenter is from the great gun-free state of New York, Niger Ennis. He's joining us as the president of CORE, the Congress for Racial Equality, and it's one of the oldest civil rights organizations in the country. Niger, thank you.
Thank you, Star, and thank you, Cure, for putting this important press conference together today. I'm not going to be nearly as eloquent as the speakers that came before me, and a lot has been asserted here. But let me just briefly say that gun control, for Black Americans, we know that gun control has ultimately been about people control. It sprouts from racist soil, be it after or during the infamous Dred Scott case, where Black man's humanity was not recognized. And the beauty about some racists is that sometimes they're blatantly honest. And the racist Chief Justice, Taney, said, we cannot allow the law to recognize the humanity of this individual because he would be able to keep and bear arms. When a lot of Democratic-controlled segregationist governments after the Civil War attempted to deny Black men and women their freedom, they instituted Black codes, largely to deny the Second Amendment from newly freed slaves. And so today in our urban centers, innocent Black folk may not be the victims of the Klan or of white racism, but we are the victims of merciless criminals that are armed and don't give a darn about gun control laws. How dare you talk about taking away a constitutional right? The Second Amendment is not about guns. It's about freedom. It's about liberty. And it's about full humanity of decent people. You know, many of us gun rights advocates, my father, Roy Ennis, chairman of the Congress of Racial Equality, serves on the board of the NRA. And I want to thank Harry Alford for his powerful words about the NRA and the history, the right history of the NRA, which was established not only by religious leaders, but by former Union soldiers that were disturbed that Southerners could shoot straighter and better than Northerners in the Union Army. But the reality is that for me, it's a little bit more than just about the philosophies around the Second Amendment. It's very personal. You see, I lost two brothers to violence, one in 1968, one in 1982. They were murdered by criminals who didn't pay attention to gun laws. And they were murdered in communities, the South Bronx and in Harlem, in cities that had the strictest gun control laws. I ask myself always, what if decent people in that communities where my brothers were killed had had the opportunity to step in, to confront that bad guy, that bad criminal with a gun, with a good person with a gun? They might be alive today. Thank you again, Star, and thank you all for this important support for freedom and for liberty.
Our next presenter is from the great state of Georgia, Dr. Deborah Honeycutt, and she is a board certified family medicine physician and a medical director of Clayton State University Health Clinic in Atlanta. In addition, Dr. Honeycutt currently serves as the Georgia State Delegate to the American Academy of Family Physicians Commission on Education. I really appreciate my dear friend joining us at this very important press conference. Dr. Honeycutt.
Thank you, Star. Well, I am, yes, from the great state of Georgia, but I was born in Chicago, Illinois. And now I live just a stone's throw from Kennesaw, Georgia. Chicago, Illinois, one of the strictest gun law areas in our country. Murder rate, out the wahoo. Kennesaw, Georgia, where every able-bodied head of household is mandated by law to have a firearm for protection of their families. Very low. I think in the last 20 years, there have been 3 murders in Kennesaw, Georgia. But I speak to you from the standpoint of a physician today. The Second Amendment to our Constitution of the United States, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, as a physician, when considering a patient's problem, I take seriously my pledge to first do no harm. Anyone who needs a doctor, like you, Pastor, they want to be cared for by a doctor who takes seriously that pledge. First, do no harm. Those who serve in our United States government take a pledge to uphold the Constitution of these United States. Despite the Center for Disease Control reports that in 2010, firearms were used to take the lives of almost 32,000, that's 32,000 Americans, via homicide, suicide, and unintentional shootings. And despite some recently highly publicized yet tragic murders committed with firearms, constitutionally protected rights must remain. Now, obesity is a serious problem in America, increasing in prevalence, affecting millions, and causing 300,000 deaths a year. 300,000 deaths a year in our country. Now, President Obama has voiced his concern regarding obesity, noting initiatives such as Let's Move and the My Plate guidelines as some solutions to the problem.
I'm only here to expose all that fraud bullshit these Democrats been telling you. I'm going to let this queen continue to speak, but I'm going to just tell you, this is what it is. This is what I'm here for. I'm going to let her speak.
Solutions aimed at
I'll be right back. Give me 1 second. I use the bathroom.
And supplying them with knowledge and opportunities to make the best choices for their health. Now, we would not think of enacting regulations that outlaw eating or outlaw eating certain foods or that dictate how much food a person can eat just because some people are obese in this country. Banning guns or infringing the gun rights of citizens does not and will not keep criminals or those intent on harming others from acquiring and using guns. The persons who want to infringe upon our constitutional right to keep and bear arms must be made to understand that they are not keeping their pledge to uphold our Constitution. So I ask our President and the Congress, first, do no harm. Do no harm to these citizens of the United States of America. Uphold your pledge, just like I as a physician uphold my pledge. Uphold the Constitution of the United States. Don't infringe upon the constitutional rights to keep and bear arms. Uphold that constitutional right. First, do us no harm. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Our next presenter is Reverend William Owens Jr., who is the founder of God, Guns, and the Constitution. And CURE works closely with his coalition of African American pastors, and we will be hosting regional town halls in Black communities across the country with CAP on this very important issue. William Owens.
Thank you, Star. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to give honor to God and his son, Jesus Christ, who is my Lord and Savior. Honor to those who spoke before me with much respect. Also honor to my wife of 27 years and my 4 adult children, 4 and no more. And they're all out the door. I am founder of Warriors Arise Ministries, Spiritual Life, Spiritual Maturity, and Spiritual Warfare. And we are engaged in a great spiritual conflict in our nation.
Preach.
The current trajectory in which the Obama administration is leading our country is evident through policy that is being executed sometimes with executive orders.
Wow.
It should cause every leader, especially that of the clergy, within both the white and black community, to arise and speak truth to power.
Wow.
To forsake this highest call is to surrender our families and our faith. We have no option but to draw the line in the sand and stand against this and any arrogant effort to tamper with our constitutional right to bear arms. On February 2nd of this year, I, along with other leaders, including Gun Owners of America, stood in front of the Capitol building and held a press conference on this very issue. And the issue, and I want to somewhat borrow from the fact that the pastor talked about light, and the light gets its origin and gets its power from the truth. In John 8:32, it says, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." I want to at least take a look from a historic perspective on this issue, because history will testify of what's to come. The truth of God's hand was upon Christopher Columbus in such a way that he declared these words: "The working out of all things was entrusted by our Lord to each person. But it happens in conformity with his sovereign will, even though he gives advice to many. I've found our Lord well disposed toward my heart's desire, and he gave me the spirit of intelligence for the task. Who doubts this illumination was from the Holy Spirit? He, the Spirit, with marvelous rays of light, consoled me through the holy and sacred scriptures, a strong and clear testimony, encouraging me to proceed. And continually, without ceasing for a moment, they inflame me with a sense of great urgency. If it were not for God upon the heart of this man and upon those who came to this country for religious liberties, we would not be standing here today. The truth is, it was the guns or muskets and swords of the black-robed regiment that fought off the efforts of the British to take away their armor. And that name was given to them by the British, the black-robed regiment. The truth is, it's both God holding our hands and our guns and the other that made the Constitution even possible. So there you have it, God, guns, and the Constitution. You can't have one without the other. And it is this same Constitution that will ensure we keep tyranny at bay. Anyone who claims Christianity, and not everyone does, and not everyone should, please tell the American people why we should, and why some do, deny the history of God and therefore the historic context of guns in our nation. Should we be silent to a political agenda that is contrary to the truth that God, guns, and the Constitution work together in order to enable us what we enjoy today? This current administration is far from the truth.
It's Obama's administration.
This agenda is becoming
Obama's administration, people. This was aired during Obama's administration. Let me just say that.
More and more obvious to all.
These are black leading conservatives, for those who is just tuning in.
That it's a distraction. It's a reason. It's an excuse to carry out an ideology that is more evident every day and every week that goes by, that it is anti-American. And when you touch the Second Amendment, you can't become more anti-American, because America would not be without her guns, and guns would not be necessary without her God. We call upon Americans, both black, white, Hispanics, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and even those who are not of our faith, to agree upon this. Without God, without guns, and without the Constitution, America's end will come with haste. For when they change our Constitution, they will take our guns. And when they take our guns, they will also seek to take our God. That's when Americans will fight back. We fought with the help of God for our God-given freedoms, so it should not come as a surprise that Americans will fight when their freedoms are threatened. It's in our DNA. What man would not fight to protect his wife? What mother would not fight to protect her child? And what nation will not fight to protect its very existence? I say to those who claim the Christian faith, including our president and any politician, your claim of Christianity demands you to speak to these issues as Christ would, even as my claim of Christianity demands me to speak truth to power. We are doing these town hall meetings, God, Guns, and the Constitution. Our next one is in Dallas, March 9th. We are determined to bring pastors, leaders, Republicans, Democrats, Independents together and discuss these issues. People are coming out because people are concerned. I want to once again thank Star Parker and Cure for putting this on, because Americans will not be silent. Our Second Amendment is ours to keep, and we must defend it and ensure that no power, by executive order or not, takes it away. Thank you very much.
Our final speaker of this session, before we open to questions from the media, will be Pastor Bruce E. Rivers, a very dear friend of mine from the great state and gun-free state of California. Bruce is the father of a child who was murdered by gang members, and he wanted to put a face on what urban centers are dealing with, in particular to this issue. Bruce.
And the church said amen. I'm not a politician. I'm just a preacher. And you invite me to the party, you got to let me dance the way I dance. I want to thank God for this opportunity to stand up for freedom. I want to thank my friend Star Parker for the Cure Pastors Network, of which I'm one of the original members. Amen? Amen. I want to echo the words of Mr. Frederick Douglass, which we heard a little earlier. A man's rights rest in three boxes: the ballot box, the jury box, and the cartridge box. Upon hearing from the God-appointed speakers that have already talked before me, I am humbled today as I reflect on an event which this December 2013 will have eclipsed 20 years of my life. I grew up on the beautiful Monterey Peninsula, the adopted son of a Navy veteran father and a civil service mother. Went to college, graduated, traveled, finally settled down with a ready-made family. God blessed me with a great lady, 2 sons and a daughter. Oh, happy day. Time passes, seasons change, people grow up. Boys become men, girls become women, and the community I walked and talked and played in changed. Seaside, California was a great Mecca situation where large African-American population between San Francisco and Los Angeles, and we had a wonderful time growing up there in the 60s and 70s. Fast forward to 1993, because I don't want to keep it too long, after a family trip from Thanksgiving, life turned upside down. My son was gunned down right in front of my house by men who had criminal records and automatic weapons. One of the guns was found on the day of my son's funeral as the police chased one of the alleged shooters through his home. And due to our total disregard for God's foundational truth, nothing was done. No arrests were made until close to 20 years later. You get home and read Genesis 4 when you get a chance. The Word of God teaches us about the first murder. Cain's sacrifice was unacceptable, and then he got angry with God as God insisted that he do the right thing. In other words, Cain got a little ticked off because he couldn't do his own thing. Cain decided to kill his brother rather than get right with God. Sounds like our country. There were no guns available then, although there may have been a knife or maybe a rock or a farming tool. The Bible does not say whether Cain had a knife or a gun or a rock. The point is, the evil in Cain's heart was the cause of the murder, not the availability of the murder weapon. God did not ban rocks or knives or farming tools then, but he did banish the murderer. And if you look in Genesis 9 and 6, you will see God has instituted capital punishment. Well, whoever sheds blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. But he said nothing about banning weapons. Let me be clear right here. There's no such thing as an assault weapon. These are just high caliber guns, amen? The AR in the AR-15 doesn't stand for assault rifle. It stands for the company that made it, the Armor Light Company, who later sold it to Colt, amen? A little history for you. You need to get this stuff right when you put it out there, amen? It stands for the Armor Light Rifle. Listen to me. I have since asked myself this question. Would the proposed regulations that I've been reading on the table today have saved my child from being gunned down? The answer is no. Due to the fact that the criminals who had the guns did not obey the law. And I believe they won't obey the next law. The guns they had were illegal. I just told you they found one of them as a suspect ran through his house. One of the very guns. The killing went on for close to 3 years in our community. We lost 9 children in Seaside, California, on the beautiful Monterey Bay. Children who, the summer before, were all in my living room playing Nintendo and Mario Brothers. God, I hate that song. Has forgiveness come? Yes. What stopped the killing? Not the law, not the police. You do realize the police are peace officers, not really protectors. But it was prayer. We went out on the street corner and stood 72 hours on the anniversary of my son's death. 3 days, standing in a corner with a coat and a chair and prayed. And the killing stopped. I've since learned there's a systematic plan to force me and all of you to live apart from our God by agreeing with everything which is contrary to his standard. God, when he dealt with Cain, did not register rocks or put a background check on those with their farming equipment or whatever it was that Cain used to kill his brother. Instead, God dealt with the criminal. All the way back to Noah, the penalty for murder has been death. I do remember going with my Uncle Lee and my Mr. West hunting at Big Sur, chasing them pigs and them rabbits and them ducks. I remember my father taking me to the gun range to learn proper understanding of guns and responsible ownership. But I also learned I did have a right to bear arms for protection of my family. I wasn't home that night. But I heard the 35 gunshots. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat, rat-tat-tat-tat-tat. I learned then I am the first line of defense in my house. Not just the police, and certainly not this government. The word of God, in my humble opinion, and upon which I stand, is good enough for me, especially when I read Nehemiah. Those who built on the wall and those who carried burdens loaded themselves so that with one hand they worked as construction, and with the other hand they held a weapon. Every one of the builders had his sword girded at his side as he built. Thank you, Cure, as we begin to rebuild the freedom in this country. I have learned how to say enough. I've learned how to say I shall not be moved. I've learned how to say no new rules until you learn to enforce the ones we already have. In the name of Jesus, I pray.
You know, when you look at everything that I presented on this show today, in all common sense, why would you vote blue? If you're a minority, why would you vote blue? If you're middle class, why would you vote blue? If you're rich, why would you vote blue? If you live in democratic cities. Barack Obama has used the pen to take away as many of your rights as he could. He was not a champion for black Americans. He wasn't a champion for Americans at all. Put billions of dollars on a plane, went and gave it to some people that live in a bunch of sand, and that money alone could have helped countless inner cities. Bailed out banks, you name it. He never bailed out America. He put a Band-Aid on an economy, borrowed more money, and raised the debt, and continuously watched while assault rifles, so-called AR-15s, because they're not AR-15s, these kids have a bunch of fucking guns. He watched while boatloads of guns were being dropped off in Chicago. In my opinion, I believe this agent, known as Barack Obama, was sent by these people that he works for to go to Chicago, to learn Chicago as much as he could, because they planned on using Chicago. I also believe these other theater events, such as Sandy Hook and these other shootings that occurred during his time, were either orchestrated or preventable. Whenever you see black people being assaulted, it's by Democratic whites. Somehow they're not telling you that. That they're not telling you. Barack Obama has got in office when the country was at its greatest and lovingest and most tolerant, understanding, and most prepared. At that point, he went in with this diversion and he divided. He allowed policies that already existed to impoverish and oppress blacks, and then he allowed it to be blamed on whites, as if these same policies didn't affect whites that were in the same social class. Making whites feel guilty in this social class, it forces them to show that they're not racist as being aired on television. And you invent white guilt. White guilt was invented during Barack Obama's era. This is another identity politic used by the Democrats. And it was invented during his era in order to make white men, and in normal conditions that would think rational, find themselves outside screaming with a bunch of irrational women. They've conformed their young white leaders to feel guilty for their race, as if they're responsible for their existence, as if they're responsible for being here, as if they asked. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know anyone that's asked to be born. Shit, if that's the case, when I die, I'll make sure to ask again. But yet, this diversive tool was invented and used during Barack Obama's presidency to be able to create the beta male. See, blacks were already disenfranchised from the American flag. They didn't understand what the flag meant because they never had the protection guaranteed by this flag. Because in the cities they predominantly live in, they're not afforded the right to protect themselves. They're only victims. And of white men, white liberal men, black liberal men, and the policies within these communities. So they're never going to understand the importance of this if they haven't been given the right since birth to feel its protection. Now do you see where the angle starts? Now do you see how they can get people mad and upset? People outside screaming, in gun laws. But the states with the most strict of gun laws have the highest rates of murder. As I informed you before, in all my years of being in the streets and dealing drugs, I don't know of many actual black men that got up and left from their neighborhoods, even to go to other neighborhoods. There are men in New York City right now that have never left Brooklyn, New York, that have never experienced getting on an airplane and leaving the state of New York, let alone the country. There aren't a lot of black men leaving with tractor trailers and U-Haul trucks to get these many weapons, to find themselves in cities where weapons are illegal to even sell. It just doesn't add up. The invention of the white beta male, by prescribing him white guilt because of his ungodly existence, because of his color, has flipped the race coin on its face. The Democrats have taken racism and used it as a tool to be discriminatory against white men. You're automatically discriminated against if you're a white man. And then you have to find yourself outside proving that you're not some type of racist. Because if you don't do this, and if you say Donald Trump is doing a good job, you're a racist. If you're a white woman and you say Trump is making sense and doing a good job, you're a racist. You don't even have to like him. But if you like what he's doing if you like what he's doing as far as the economy is concerned, as far as his foreign policy is concerned, you're a racist. So even if it's working, you're a racist. So in order for you to not be a racist, you have to then say, it doesn't matter if it's working, you don't care. He's a racist. No one has an articulate opinion, argument, or discussion with facts showing this. They'll only say what someone said, they said. Because someone is telling them when they're in groups, we're going to march. And then they say, we're going to march. We're going to be heard. We're going to be heard. Because someone is dictating everything to these children. Fragile mind, high emotion, full of youthful exuberance. They're taking advantage of both sides. And they create an enemy in someone that's actually trying to free them. When you ask me why I voted for Donald Trump, why am I for Donald Trump, people? I got to explain to you that I understand what this means. Even though I've lived my life prior to changing and doing the work of God, I understood what this meant. I also understood that because of the city that I lived in, I was deprived of it. Because being a genius, I understood that the city I lived in wouldn't guarantee me my rights. Even after having a felony, that I would have to use my intelligence to be a better criminal. When I decided to walk away from a life of crime and doing things against God's work, it was because I was talked to by God. The idea of leaving when you're up is the idea of leaving when you're better. Whether it's financially, spiritually, or emotionally. You find that there's a very big world out here. And there aren't enough people actually talking about the fact that there are Democrats that have alienated blacks from this protection. Protection that God guarantees them. Because somehow the Democrats have led blacks and other poor Americans to believe that it's them who's going to protect them. They're not doing any work in Washington. They're telling you to go outside. It's a diversion. Go outside and march. They're paying for a bunch of people to get in vans to go to and from places. And it's the same group of people every time you see them. The same Muslim woman with the hijab. She's a complete fraud. How could this bitch actually tell you in one breath, and I don't give a fuck who's a feminist is going to say I'm wrong for this, fuck her. How could she tell you in the same breath she's a feminist and she's for women's rights? And she even tell you that she agrees that she should be covered up. There are plenty of Muslim women who don't. Why does she preach hate? It's actually against Islam to go against the law of the land. The Prophet says that you are supposed to obey the laws of the lands and the people of the books. But this woman runs around hating Christian white men in a country in which guarantees this bitch the right to say the shit she's saying. But her religion explicitly expresses she does not do it. And it also expresses that she doesn't find herself in a manner in which she does spewing such hatred. But she does it. She's not even a real fucking Muslim. She's not. She's a fraud. She's a placed mole put there to give you excitement, to have you hype. But they put this bitch in every place strategically. A bunch of them. Put them in vans and they bust them. And they take them and they sit them outside. And it's the same group of motherfuckers. No different. There's no one new though. Trust me, if there was really a large amount of people, they would show it. Because when they were showing the initial Trump reaction and the Me Too, they were showing the crowd, hundreds of thousands of people, so irate and crazy and everything else. And that shit dwindled down and died down because people started looking at their paychecks and they started keeping a lot more money and they started realizing, let me shut the fuck up. Let me shut the fuck up. Let me shut the fuck up and let me get this extra money because this shit is working right now. Oh shit, he about business. We don't gotta fear nobody overseas. He done put that shit and nipped it in the bud. Oh, we haven't got to talk about it.
There's so many fucking jobs currently out here right fucking now. You pick one, choose one, spin the fucking bottle on it. Pick a career. Ha! The shit's different right now. Nothing they can talk about. They put the same group of 40 sorry motherfuckers and a bunch of young, dumb, sorry for themselves motherfuckers who's borderline suicidal because they so fucking drenched in white fucking guilt outside. And that's what they do. They get a bunch of revved up Latinos telling Latinos that only we can guarantee you safety, as if prayers and owning a fucking firearm won't do it. For those that are able to carry firearms on you, feel pretty badass, don't you? Feel strong and confident, and you are fully aware of your constitutional rights, and it's amazing, isn't it? They are locking people up in New York City for that same right. This shit is ridiculous. We're going to vote red. And come Turning Point USA, I'm going to make history. This president will make history for Americans. And specifically will put to bed the notion that he's a racist. And everyone that's doubling down on the hate from this president and asking me why I'm doing what I'm doing. If you know me, for those that know me, that's why a lot of my followers from music stayed over and they're loving everything that I'm doing. And I'm talking to the people are gravitating towards everything that I'm doing. The reason why they're staying is because they know I'm used to proving people wrong. I'm used to people telling me I can't do it and doing it. This is all I've ever done. And I'm going to use my genius and my God-given talent to wake you the fuck up. Fuck the other side, bitch. We don't care.